Welcome to the Life Leadership Podcast with myself, Leila Singh, all things coaching, career and personal branding. This podcast is for ambitious career professionals like you, wanting to create a life of choice and freedom, to be, do and have more through overcoming limitations, to develop new perspectives and insights, and to redefine your success, be that in work, health, relationships, and so much more. In today's episode, I'm speaking with Pratik Sridhar. Pratik comes with many years of recruitment experience across internal and agency environments, across a diverse spectrum of global markets, including New Zealand, Australia, Japan, India, and the UK. Partnering with digital vendors and consultancies over his career, he is driven by automating recruitment models for companies looking to scale up their workforce, whilst ensuring that candidate onboarding experiences remain front of mind. Pratik is also a certified career coach, working with clients on CV writing, upskilling through transitional phases in their careers and everything in between. In this episode, Pratik shares on perspectives on the current state of the job market, particularly in the technology industry, how the role of AI impacts on job seekers, including CV creation, the subjectivity of hybrid working, the future and the core 3 Cs, staying relevant in an increasingly changing market ecosystem, job search strategies for Gen X, the impact of Gen Z candidates on the workforce, and finally, your competitive advantage, his top 3 strategies for standing out from the competition. So let's head over and hear what Pratik has to say. Pratik, hello there and welcome to the Life Leadership Podcast. I'm really pleased to have you here today. How are you doing?
I am great, Leila. Thank you for having me. It's nice to obviously connect and share insights. I'm looking forward to it.
Oh, definitely. And there's going to be a hell of a lot of insights on this one, I can assure you. So tell me, right, first of all, let's kick off with what would you say right now is the state of the job market in 2024? And the reason I ask is because I'm hearing a lot of mixed messages. So I'd love to have your take on this.
Yeah, and it's an interesting question. And I'm glad you asked that first. What happened after COVID, I think, was a lot of companies just started to go, look, we want to start hiring again because there was so much uncertainty during that time frame. People just went, look, let's just kick off all the projects, start hiring. And what you probably saw straight after COVID was a lot of jobs being advertised, a lot of remote work from home roles as well. Reality hasn't quite panned out the way that that probably envisaged it. So we've had a lot of obviously external factors that have impacted the hiring globally as well, and it's culminated in a lot of the big tech companies, for example, laying off people, and there's been layoff in news and things all over the world as well. So in terms of the market at the moment, I would say it's making a slow recovery as we're seeing some of these global trends, external trends sort of trying to peter out over the time. But it's certainly nowhere near as explosive as people thought it would be straight after COVID. So very interesting phase right now.
And you mentioned the tech industry specifically there. So what does that look like? I mean, is there anything more specific in that area you say, or is that pretty much what you've just explained, or is there any difference in that particular?
Yeah, look, I think my experience is largely informed from the tech sector, obviously given my background and obviously being working in the tech space for over 10 years now. The way I've always seen it is the tech industry really tends to set the benchmark in terms of globally the trends that come up. So we've often got the large tech giants in Silicon Valley, for example, who will have a trend come through, and then the world will often respond. Obviously, the stock markets, etc., also sort of responding to that. So it's all sort of it's the inception point, if you will, for the trend, in my opinion. But yeah, that's how I see it.
Okay, interesting. So AI, what is the role of AI when it comes to the hiring process, and what do we need to be aware of?
It's it's such a topical word as the AI, and people just go, "Oh yes, it's the answer to all our questions and solve all our problems." Again,
Yes,
reality.
ChatGPT.
Yeah, Chat
That's what it is.
GPT. If you need anything, go ask Chat GPT. Again, the reality in terms of the tech industry and more so for the job market, it's almost it's a phase at the moment where people don't quite know what to do with it. I think we've got a whole bunch of candidates, for example, using ChatGPT and other AI platforms to write out their CVs and cover letters, all in the illusion that it's going to sound more professional, look more professional. Reality, again, isn't quite like that. Obviously, if you're in the industry for a while, if you're a trained recruiter or a hiring manager, you can pick those out as well, because they're often missing the human element, some of these platforms. And the moment you step away from that, you lose your differentiation point, don't you? So it's very much a case of, look, yes, it's a tool, and how do I use that, and how do I sort of leverage it to enhance a profile as a candidate? Or in terms of companies as well, you've got a lot of companies who are also, I think, figuring out what their best AI value proposition is to the market. And a lot of that is also cost based. I think there's still a lot of conversations around how can we enhance our offering as a company based on AI and try to position that in the market. So still more of a transitional phase at the moment. People trying to figure out what to do with it, I think, still.
Okay. So when it comes to the adoption of AI, I mean, from a candidate point of view, what should candidates be thinking? Because I speak to people who just like that, not interested, not even thinking about it, and still in kind of the, let's call it the old school mode of approaching the job search market. And then you'll have people who will like fully embrace it, and as you said, start writing their CVs and cover letters on there. So what's the approach here for candidates in terms of what's the best thing for them to be thinking about?
So if you remember, Leila, when LinkedIn came out all those years ago, people weren't quite sure what to do with it at that point. And in fact, you had a lot of candidates going, look, how can I start using this to apply for jobs or make my social network connections, etc. And if you would think about before LinkedIn, how did people apply for jobs? I mean, it seems ridiculous to even fathom it at this point for job boards and LinkedIn. But I think what candidates can do is still leverage the functionality that AI presents and enhance their profile, but still obviously add their own touch to it before sending out the application, for example. So if I was a candidate, I'd still go to AI and say, look, let's get the framework for a CV, and then obviously make my own tweaks and have my own personalization touches to it before I send it off. I think that personalization bit's quite important, because that's what sets you apart and differentiates you again, isn't it? So
absolutely. I was going to just say that, you just said it for me, but I absolutely agree with you. And I think that's the bit, the balance of embracing it, but you've got to put in the effort. You've still got to, I talk about your personal brand, how you stand out in the market. If everyone just starts getting GPT to write everything, it's you're on a losing streak, let's say, compared to the next person who's putting that personalization to it. So
and really at the end of the day, humans are humans, and we connect because we're humans. And if you get AI to do all the writing for you, all the work, there's the connection at the end of the day, because you're going to have to work with that person if they get the job. So if you miss that, then you're missing the whole point, in my opinion.
Yeah, I completely agree. So tell me, I mean, how can candidates continue to stay relevant in such a continually changing ecosystem in the marketplace?
I think this is one thing that's going to remain consistent no matter which age or which technology tries to disrupt the market. Personalization, networking, and relationship building go a long way in terms of building those connections with potential hiring managers and recruiters. And it was relevant back in the day. It's relevant now, and probably be relevant in the future as well, because you've got so much noise out there, so many distractions now as well, in terms of different tools and connections and different methods of applying to jobs as well. But the one thing that's going to remain consistent is that personal touch and feel. you'd still have only, I think it was at 2 to 3% of jobs being advertised today. Most roles are filled through referrals or people the hiring managers and recruiters know. So again, if you're front of mind, if you've got those relationships built beforehand, you can obviously pop up when time comes to hire and fill roles. So I would still say that's the number one thing people need to do.
And I'm smiling because I talk about this a lot. So it's great to hear that somebody like yourself, who's in this space and who's got the experience and exposure to what's actually happening, is kind of reiterating what I talk about a lot. And the importance of relationships, and so many people I speak to just overlook it. They haven't even thought about it when it comes to their job search, and they rely heavily on like these portals, and whether it's LinkedIn or whatever sites to just submit applications. So with that said, and my very strong agreement with what you've just shared there, what proportion of roles, and this is a very broad question, would you say are filled through the relationship route, so the recommendation type route and who kind of thing?
So you've got to think about it from a hiring manager or a company perspective, right? So there's a cost involved in hiring people. There's a cost involved in going to market, advertising, going through a process of actually interviewing. There's man hours and workforce time that's spent there. How much easier would it be to hire someone you already knew, and then obviously have that that saving as well in terms of the cost factor? So if I'm a hiring manager, I'm always looking at people in my network or people I personally have a relationship with first to fill the role. If that doesn't work out, I'm then reaching out to my colleagues and their networks to say, look, do you guys know anyone? Because at the end of the day, someone they referred is still someone relatively trusted, as opposed to someone completely new from the market. So I would say most companies, and there's certainly not all of them, would probably go to market as a last resort once they've exhausted all the other avenues as well. So yeah, again, underscoring the importance of relationship building there.
Yeah, no, I love this. This is fantastic. And again, I can't emphasize this enough. It is, as I say, so many people I speak to are simply just submitting CVs and getting frustrated and saying the market's really hard, it's really competitive. And the first thing I invite them to do is exactly this, is to start writing down the names of people from their past employers and so forth, people they had good relationships with, even if they didn't work with them, but they just know you, they knew you, and just start reaching out, because people do like to help. Would you agree?
I think so, yes, definitely. And most people will try and go out of their way if they know someone. And at the end of the day, it's their reputation on the line as well. Yes. So you want to make sure that you are what you talk yourself up to be at some level as well, don't you?
Oh, absolutely. 100%, 100%. So tell me, Pratik, about hybrid working then. What does that look like for beyond 2024?
Interesting question. I think hybrid working as a concept was really thrust on us during the COVID time, really. It wasn't something that was very mainstream before then, and it probably would have taken a good couple of years for people to adopt it, if not, for COVID. And what I think is happening now is there's definitely hybrid working still in place, but you've seen the large tech companies, again, the likes of the Googles, the Microsoft, the Amazons, who are essentially inviting people back into the workforce and into the office, citing issues like productivity, maintenance of a company culture, and aspects of similar aspects of that kind. Now, you probably want to, I'd probably say there is some validity to those comments as well, because you want people in the office and teams to be together to build that cohesion and the camaraderie. But at the same time, I think there's definitely merits to having hybrid working go into the future, and sort of extend that out, because you've almost got that dual role then, don't you? Where you've got the cohesion and the collaboration, but you've also got the time where people can deliver during work from home as well.
Yeah, no, and again, I completely agree. I think it went from almost nothing to 100% to now it seems like people are just trying to find the right balance that works for the organization. I have friends, clients I speak to, some of them is like, I have to be in the office 2 days a week, some it's 3 or 4. So it's very, very varied from what I can see. I mean, in the future, do we feel that it can be detrimental to, let's say, career advancement? So promotion, visibility, that kind of thing. What's your view on that?
I think that depends very much on the company. It's probably subjective depending on who you talk to and who you work for.
Right.
You'll have your large companies with very structured, frameworks for promotion and sort of succession planning, etc. And I would say for those companies, it's probably less relevant because you can still achieve your targets and your goals no matter where you're working, in the office or at home. For smaller SMEs, businesses that have a bit more sort of, function a bit more relationships and then have the promotion sort of factored on that, I'd say yes, being in the office, being present, building those relationships with teams and your stakeholders probably hold a little bit more weight. But that said, I think it's really it's building relationships are going to help regardless of which company you're working for. But specifically for promotions, I would say if you're an SME or sort of more the small to medium-sized company, it's probably holding a bit more water there compared to your large enterprises.
Okay, that's interesting. So if I think about the larger organizations, then would you, if you've got, let's take a finance team, if you've got a huge finance team and you've got a few people who are in the office, say 4 days a week, and somebody who's in, or a few people who are in, I don't know, 1 day every week or couple of weeks, and it's acceptable. So it's not about the requirements of the organization, but it's now you've got choice. Going back to what you said earlier about being visible, top of mind, building those relationships, would you say there's an element of it could be a lot easier perhaps to maintain that visibility, maintain being top of mind, have people aware of who you are and what you're doing, the value you're bringing, your wins and so forth, by being in person? Or would you say that's a non-issue?
I think being in person is going to be beneficial no matter what, but you're probably looking, there's a really good book called The Like Switch, which talks about this. And it's written by an FBI agent who talks about how he got people to essentially like him when he was undercover as an operator in Russia. So what he said was proximity builds purpose, right? So when you're in close proximity with your team and you sort of got that engagement one-on-one in a close enough environment, you're going to build a rapport and you're going to build that presence with them far more than if you're based from a computer screen, all those miles away, whatever. But that said, if you're talking specifically about promotions and it's very data and sort of metrics driven, you're probably going to still get promoted. It's an entirely different conversation when you start talking about whether your teammates like you and enjoy your company, along with the promotion, which I think is probably a bit more if you're present with them a bit more.
I like what you said there about proximity builds purpose. And I think, when I was in corporate, the large organizations sort of 5-6 years ago, one of the things that I really valued was those, what we used to call water cooler conversations, the conversations when you're grabbing a coffee. And it's the, those little nuggets that wouldn't necessarily be shared in an email or on a Zoom call about maybe someone who's leaving or somebody's like something's changing or just updates of what's happening that could be invaluable for you in terms of your career advancement. So I think for me that's one of the biggest concerns of someone who's working remotely, say 90% of the time, is missing out on that, and it makes it harder for themselves therefore when they want to progress in their careers.
Yeah, look, and I think it's again, if you've got most of your team at work and you're the one person who chooses to work remotely, then yes, you're missing out. But if the company's got a policy that most people work remotely, and it also, I think you've got to factor in the environment and also the company and the team you're working with. Suppose there's a little bit more onus on the individual to come into the office if they've got more people there at the same time. So that's certainly a motivating factor, I would say, as well. But yeah, I fully agree with you. I think those water cooler conversations, essentially a lost art, I think, with Zoom, and I'm missing them. I'm sure you are as well. But yeah, no, I'm sure they'll make a comeback if people start going in more often.
No, definitely, definitely. So tell me then, what is the impact for Gen Z candidates and the workforce? What do you see happening there?
So yeah, you've got a lot of Gen Zers now entering the workforce, and there's a couple of things they really value, and I'm certainly finding this in the candidates I'm speaking to for the roles we're hiring, is speed. They really value speed, and also candidate experience as the number one sort of factor there. A lot of them like the flexibility of working not just office hours, but say logging in, logging out, working late at night. It's more about the outcomes and look at the deliverables versus the time or the clocking in, clocking out concept that we've had for so long. So a lot of them are of the mindset, look, it's all about the experience for me. And they're now taking roles just based on the experience they've had interviewing for them, and sort of the values and the ethos that company stands for as well, which wasn't probably as much a factor, I would say, even a few years ago. Yes, you'll have a few people to prioritize that, but it's now very much with the Gen Zers coming into the market. It's really sort of put that in the limelight to go, look, what's my value proposition? What's my impact on sustainability, the environment as well? And that's really front of mind for a lot of them, I would say.
So what I'm hearing then is the hiring organizations now almost need to sell themselves that little bit more when they want to hire in.
Most definitely. It's all about the candidate experience. It's all about small things like having a fully automated platform for someone who's trying to apply for a job on a mobile, right? So if the company isn't sort of optimized for that, then and someone's got to go to a website and put up a computer, it's just too much work for a Gen Zer to even kind of contemplate doing that. So it's all about speed, efficiency, and an ease of use, I would say.
Right, goodness, how the world has changed, right? So if we move on to Gen X then, so for those, what are the key things that they want to be considering when it comes to their job search strategy? Because, you know, even if I think about when I started, you know, embarked on my career, most of what we have today wasn't available when it came to job searching. LinkedIn wasn't there, etc. So what do the Gen Xers now need to really think about so that they can be front and center, they can be top of mind? I mean, you tell me, what do you see has changed over the last 20 to 30 years for them?
Great question, and I think really, really topical now that you know, everyone's talking about this, because you've got, again, so many tools and so much change happening in the landscape and the recruitment space that you really need to be on the pulse to keep up. So the biggest thing I would say is the mindset shift from longevity to value. And what I mean by that is there was a time, I'm saying not too long ago, where longevity in a certain role or in a company was seen as a great thing. It was seen as a very great value add. Not so much the case anymore, I would say. And it's very much a Gen X mindset where people tended to favor longevities and retired in roles, even thinking back to the industrial era. We're very much now in the information era where people value delivery and they value contributions, out of the box thinking, curiosity, etc. Another mindset shift that was quite prevalent back then was failure. It was seen as not such a great thing, and people just didn't want to fail. And you know, that there was a mindset block against that, I found. It's very much it's different now, where failure is almost seen as a learning edge, and you know, people want to fail and learn and develop further. So Gen X's really need to get on that bandwagon, I would say, and look, let's just shift the mindset, pivot almost to go, let's just give it a crack. If we fail, that's fine. You know, I just want to sort of learn as part of that as well. So I'd say those are the two biggest things. It's not so much about skills or anything else. It's more the mindset. And like anything, those small tweaks there can help them be a bit more engaged and involved in the market force, I would say.
Okay, interesting one. I think you mentioned there the point about failing as well. Yeah, because I think there's a lot to be said for that, because failure is like, it's that challenge of, okay, how can I do things differently? What's my approach going to be? Back to what you said about being more curious. What's the value you're going to bring? Rather than that sort of black and white approach that used to exist of, you know, you have to have certain things on your CV. You have to have had like 5 years or whatever in a company, and all of those sort of tick box things, which nowadays, like you've just, you know, clarified, are no longer the thing that people are looking for. Hiring managers, they're not looking for that. And there is a shift there that then we, as that generation who's used to what we think they look for, has shifted.
Yes, and it comes down to marketing yourself and your own brand as well. And this is something that probably Gen Xers can get a lot better at, in my opinion. And I'm generalizing to a huge extent at the moment, but anytime you want to go and have a conversation about putting yourself out there or networking, there's more of a reluctance I've found in Gen Xers to actually go out and do that. And again, generalizing, but if you put that into context and perspective, someone who's in a Gen Z, for example, it's probably a bit more likely to go out there, put themselves out there, have those conversations, build those networks, build those connections, which will ultimately stand them in good stead moving forward, as we were talking before, around relationships, etc. As well. So again, personal brand is very important now, and that comes through as an extension of that as your LinkedIn profile, your social media, and you know what you say out there in the marketplace and online as well. So it's probably one thing to be mindful of.
Interesting. Like, interesting for people who are listening to this. So I mean, this is like gold, what you're sharing here today. So I really appreciate this. So now tell me, what is the impact therefore, based on what you've just shared, of you know, the changes that we have experienced over the last 20 to 30 years on CV creation?
Yeah, this you're probably going to get a different answer every time you ask this to someone. And just there's no one right way to write a CV, Leila, in my opinion. But what you can do is make it so it's a couple of things. It's personable, and it tells a story, and it really communicates your journey, right? So again, it's all about standing out and making sure you're relevant. And as a career coach myself, I've been coaching people in the past, and I tell them, why do you need a CV? And then the answer they give me is always, look, to get a job. And it's correct. I correct them straight away, and I say, look, it's not to get a job, it's to get an interview, right? So CVs and interviews, in my opinion, very much part of the same pod in terms of helping you get the job. A CV helps you get the interview, and an interview gives you an opportunity to market yourself, to pitch to get the job. So my advice for CV writing would be to make sure that you're differentiating yourself, and that comes through a couple of things. Be really clear what your value proposition is and why you're trying to apply for the role, and what problem you're trying to solve for the person who's advertised it as well. At the end of the day, anyone who's ever advertised a role, you can ask any of them, they probably advertised it for two reasons. One of two reasons: they either don't have the time to do that role themselves, or they don't have the skill set to do that themselves. So if you're a candidate and you're focusing on that and going, how can I solve this person's problem and make myself a value for the role, and sort of differentiate myself by having a good sort of career statement and this objective at the start, really focusing on the value you bring, going then into the personality of what you're actually communicating through the CV as well. Because at the end of the day, it's humans talking to humans, like we were saying before. If I'm a human, I want to know, and I'm going to work with you, I want to know that I can connect with you and make sure that, you know, we have a good working relationship and rapport. So have a hobby section in there and make it a bit more personable as well. You know, what do you enjoy doing in your free time? Really communicate that to the hiring manager. I'd say those are the two things that really set you apart from others. And let's face it, we're not in an age where there's no competition now. There's going to be competition for every role probably that people apply for. And thinking again, front of mind, how do I differentiate myself as a candidate? How do I stand apart and make sure that I'm solving that problem for the manager? Would be my tips there.
Fantastic. I love this. So, I mean, I think you probably covered some of this off before. I'm going to ask it anyway in case there's things that you have missed or not mentioned. So what are the top 3 strategies that you would say in today's working landscape that will really aid job seekers to be able to stand out? And you know, I share this a lot about the fact that it is a competitive landscape. You know, there's a lot of people now. You can see it on LinkedIn with the amount of applications for one role. And I hear feedback even up to very senior, like C-suite roles. I had a guy recently saying how, you know, 80 odd people had applied for this job, which is not what you would have seen years ago. So it is clearly competitive. Like you said, I think what you've highlighted there about the purpose of a CV is not to get a job. It is to get to the next stage where you then get to sell yourself. And that is about being personable, be able to build that connection and that rapport with people. These are all the soft skills that a lot of people need to, I guess, place more value on as things they want to develop and to hone. So what are the strategies you would say in the landscape that we've explored here that would help them to stand out?
Number one thing, do your research. Do your research in the company. Do your research on the role you're applying for. Do your research on the hiring managers there. I'd go as far as to say, look them up on LinkedIn, look them up online as well. If there's any articles or case studies written about them. You'd be surprised how many people walk into an interview and don't even know which role they've applied for or why they're even there. So it still bothers me to this day that it happens, but it does. And again, we go back to building rapport and relationships. At the end of the day, it's humans talking to humans. Can you have a conversation, or are you so so into your skill sets that you're very robotic? How do you communicate? How do you come across? What's your personal brand like? Are you able to have a water cooler conversation with that person if you do get the job? So we've got to remember that as well. It's as much the candidate interviewing the company as it is the company interviewing the candidate. I think what most job seekers, or a lot of job seekers today, get misled by is they get very nervous thinking they've got to make a good first impression. But it goes both ways. The company's got to make a good first impression on them as well. And it's probably something that, thinking about will probably ease in the nerves a little bit, to go, yep, it's a two-way conversation here. Am I getting along with them? Are they getting along with me? But yeah, research and the human touch, I would say, still.
Yeah. And I like that point you just raised at the end about the two-way conversation. I've said this for years. It is, it's not just go and sit there and answer the questions. Like, is this right for you? What are you looking for? What's important to you? And I think as you mentioned, the Gen Z candidates will probably more likely do that because that's what's like really important for them. Is, as you said, like the culture, the sustainability, all of that that's going on, like what experience are they going to have here? And I think for those that haven't really considered this before, it is a two-way conversation. Is they're interviewing you, to some extent you're interviewing them to say, is this a right fit for me now that I know what it is I really want? To be able to make that right decision.
And it's almost encouraged people to think longer term when they go in for interviews, because most of them just want to get the job and they don't mind how they get it, they just want to get it. But I almost want to encourage them to go, look, think about what if you do get the job and you're in that environment. Are you going to be happy? Are you going to be contributing to your 100%? Or are you going to go 2 months in, sorry, not for me, I want to leave, I want to find something else. And you're right back where you started in the first place. So really think about, again, going back to the two-way conversations, how are you going to fit in the environment? Have you met your colleagues? How do you get along with them? And interview the company just as much as the company is interviewing you. Because you're a brand, they're a brand at the end of the day. And it's a marriage of brands, essentially, isn't it? So you just want to make sure that's cohesive.
Brilliant. Pratik, this has been incredible.
honestly, I think that there is so much value in hearing what you have shared. I already have about 10 people in my head that I know will really benefit from this conversation. So I just want to thank you immensely for being so open to share, you know, what is going to be a huge value for people to be able to, you know, whether it's adapt, to tweak, to think about another perspective here when it comes to their job search, because there was gold in here.
Oh, the pleasure, Leila. I think thank you for the platform. It's most of the things pretty self-explanatory, I would say, but it really helps to have that conversation. And if it is helping someone in that job search journey, or even a company who's trying to put out the feelers into the marketplace, and yeah, very happy to obviously have a conversation and sort of help that. So no, thank you for the platform.
Oh, absolute pleasure. Your details will be in the show notes as well. So anyone who is listening to this podcast or watching this on YouTube, then Pratik's details will be below in the, if it's in YouTube, or in the show notes for you to be able to reach out to him. Pratik, thank you again very, very much. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks, Leila. Have a good rest of your day. Speak soon.
Thank you for listening. Please subscribe to this podcast if you haven't already done so. And if you enjoyed and gained value from today's episode, then do please leave a review telling us your key learnings and what you enjoyed the most. And do please share this podcast with your friends and colleagues so we can spread the word on life leadership, creating a life of choice, freedom, and new possibilities. Connect with me directly on LinkedIn, and if you would like to learn more about how we can work together, either DM me on LinkedIn or email me. All details and resources can be found in the show notes.